I am Lisa Singer, the event editorial manager at Media Post, and you're watching right now Insider Summit BTS. It's our new series where I get to sort of pull back the curtain on some of the most influential women marketers today. And with me, I have Sonia Anand, and she is, I want to make sure, because you just were promoted earlier this year. So I want to get the title. You are the Executive Director and Director of Global Innovation and Omnichannel Experience at MAC Cosmetics. So welcome,
Yes.
Sonia.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's great to see you again, Lisa.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Almost not quite in person, but we're working there.
It will happen soon enough.
I know. Well, first off, congratulations. I mean, it's nice, especially with everything, all the craziness. It's nice to see some good things happening through all this time. So congratulations on your promotion.
Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. Luckily, we've got really strong teams at MAC, and the team under me is incredibly strong, and I would be nothing without them, but I really appreciate your support.
Yeah, no, and just, I mean, because you've been now with MAC for a while, but I mean, I want to sort of backtrack you a little bit because I know with, you and I know I'm probably coming across as a stalker because I do find out much about everyone when I talk to them.
All
So,
good.
but I know you graduated right away and with a marketing degree, and you did get a job right out of college within the degree, but it seems like you then sort of you stayed in marketing, but you sort of redirected your ambitions. Talk about that a little bit and what you maybe initially were setting out to do and why that changed.
Sure. Yeah. So it's funny you say that. I think for me, the red thread throughout my entire career has been growth and really kind of avenues that are experiencing great growth. So as you mentioned, I started my career at The Gap, where we had a great training program called the Retail Management Program, where you rotate through more traditional retail type of roles like merchandising, inventory management, production. And outside of that, you get a full-time placement. Ultimately, my full-time placement was in Banana Republic's international arm, where we were really working on growing the business outside the US. And that was, mind you, 2010 or so. So really kind of starting to see that growth. I love the idea of building something new within the retail realm and seeing that grow and developing a business. And so that is really what you'll see kind of throughout the career, because my next step following my time at Banana Republic was really to move to business school. And that's where I jumped into the world of online and digital. So really spent my time there understanding how, D2C businesses are growing, how direct online businesses should be built. And so with that, decided to jump to Michael Kors post-graduation with my MBA, where they were actually building their own online business in-house. It was previously owned and operated outside of the brand. And so that, once again, was something where I started with something small and was looking to grow something and create that growth. Following my time at Michael Kors, I landed at A-Day, which was a great brand that was really kind of in the startup phase at that point. And I was doing e-com and operations for the brand. And with that also, given that it was in the startup phase, as all startups are, you wear a lot of different hats. And so really allowed me to grow and understand how you can build a business, especially one that isn't, so robust like a Michael Kors and a Gap, and do a lot of things with, not a lot of time and resources. So that was a wonderful experience, which led me to where I am at MAC, really growing digital innovation, where I've been for the last 5 years. And it's been great because, one of my first projects here was seeing augmented reality launch for the brand, which now has become such a big, robust global platform for us. So that growth and the idea of continuing to push boundaries in the retail umbrella is something I've always found passion for, but I just followed through in different ways.
Yeah, and it sounds like, I mean, and in terms of even just you switching over, you want to do getting more online, the digital world. And that obviously was something that changed. Technology changed.
Yep.
The way consumers are buying, or anything that's happening right now, especially now, even more so. But also then you said AR, kind of came about. So it seems like as the technology offers you these other opportunities, then you're ready to jump on them. You're sort of keeping that eye out on what's the next thing, that whether it be from MAC or any of your other companies that you worked with, that you wanted to jump into those as well.
Yeah, it's about consumer experience ultimately, right? Because our consumer demands are changing, quite frankly, month by month. I mean, I think, it's funny. I was talking to someone and I was like, I haven't really gone grocery shopping in the last year. I haven't had to. It's it's not something that, I find enjoyment in personally. So I've been able to order it. But that was, my consumer demand wasn't really there prior to the pandemic starting, because you found some time. It was a social experience. I never really liked it. But now with the click of a button, anything can be in your hands, in sometimes 2 hours or less. So I think just following where consumers are growing and changing is something that's always been of interest to me, and working with global markets as well.
Yeah, and it's funny, I mean, in terms of even just, as you said, it wasn't something that you necessarily wanted to do shopping, grocery shopping online, but you sort of were forced to do it. And then it became, okay, this is actually a pretty good thing.
The
So I want
norm.
to ask you that in terms of, was there any occasion in your life where maybe it was a sort of a setback where you sort of said, okay, this is horrible. But then now in hindsight, when you look back, it was like, wow, that was just really, the best thing that could have happened to me at the time.
Yeah, for sure. So funny fact, while you mentioned I have a marketing degree from undergrad. I also had a co-degree in finance. And so going to an undergrad business school like NYU Stern, it's a finance heavy school, being in New York in the first place. So I was like on track to be in investment management or in investment banking. And so my junior year summer, which is where you're usually getting, the internship that sets you up for the full-time job, hopefully, I interned at Lehman Brothers, which, as we all know, is no longer a company that people work for in this day and age. So, I was on this track to be in finance. I graduated in 2009. And in the middle of the recession, what do? Banks are not really giving out many offers. They're very hard to come by. So I needed sort of a plan B in that case. And I had always found passion in retail and fashion. Throughout my undergrad, I interned at great fashion houses and a couple of different publications. So that was my second best and my default. So I remember this one day distinctly where I was like, okay, I got to figure out where I'm going to work now, because banking jobs are few and far between. And I walked down Fifth Avenue and I wrote down a list of all the stores and brands I thought were doing a really good job at their business. And I reached out to a bunch of them, and I was really looking for a program that really sets you up for, a different path within these businesses, because often I find that gives you a really great architecture to set up for future success. And Gap happened to have this retail management program. And at that point, 2009, San Francisco wasn't the Silicon Valley per se it is today. It was a really great place to move and start my career. And so it was a wonderful fit to transition. It really kind of put me on this path and gave me a really good understanding of how retail works in general, which the program has a lot of education components with additions to the actual work that you're doing. So at that point, I was scared out of my mind. I thought I was going to be a banker. I thought I knew what I was going to do. And, in hindsight, it was the best thing because it really landed me in the right career and place.
Yeah.
So
No, and it definitely, I mean, obviously that's huge because it did turn, you wouldn't have turned to retail if that
right.
had happened. So the recession was ultimately a good thing. But I do think what I love what you were saying is you looked at the stores or the brands that were doing what you wanted to get into,
Yeah.
rather than, I think a lot of people, especially even when you're younger, you tend to go to the help wanted ads, or you go
Right.
to whatever you see online, or even a headhunter, what they may have to offer you, rather than sort of picking and choosing, I would like to work here. And it may take you a little longer to get there, or
Mhm.
maybe not. Maybe they see that passion, but I still think you sort of shaped it. And I really think that's such a smart move, in terms of, if you started off in a retail brand that maybe wasn't doing what you
Right.
wanted to, it could have completely, changed where your, projection went as well.
Absolutely. And you know what? It was funny. I was looking back. My parents, of course, were asking me to clean out all my old stuff from my room. And I found my initial project that I did for the application to the program. We had to do a whole presentation, and they flew you out to San Francisco to present in front of leadership. And it's funny because my project was actually on a home essentials line for Gap, which they just recently launched, which was funny because it was such a 360 moment for me that I was sort of thinking in that way so many years ago, and to see it, in real life is super, super cool. So that said, I definitely credit Gap to sort of allowing me to set my career off on the right path. But it also taught me that you can't always have your eggs in one basket. You have to sort of have a plan or a backup, or be creative about how you're thinking. Because especially in this day and age, in an innovation in a digital field, you can never predict where you're going to be in the next year or two. So I think that flexibility is critically important.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I have to say with Mac, especially, there's always that one product that kind of everyone has to have, like, I think there was a pink lipstick that was always like sold out that I remember was really popular. And I believe recently what Velvet Teddy lipstick, which is such a good neutral shade. Anyway, we're not getting into makeup. I'm not saying that. What basically this is a long lead into is there things that are must-haves for you and can't be from the Mac line, but not even necessarily makeup. But if you were on a deserted island and just stuck there with three items, and the people will be extra, so you can't include them as well. So no, I know you have a toddler, so
Sure.
no husband, but what would that be? What would the three must-haves be for you on that deserted island?
So my three must-have beauty products. Yeah.
Nope,
Um,
can't be beauty
or it
product.
could be anything.
Anything. I mean, if
Ooh.
you want it to be a beauty product, just we're staying away from Mac. But if there is something that's your go-to, that's fine. But it does not have to be a beauty product. Just
Mm,
three things that you just were like, okay, I need to have.
that's a really hard question. Okay. So I would definitely say sunscreen because if it's a deserted island, I need to be safe.
I
So that's definitely one of three. Um, I would say a good series of books. I love a good dramatic series of, and honestly, reading feels like an indulgence these days to get like a moment to sit and
Yep.
actually read. So I would say that. And my third would be, well, if people don't count, I'll take an album, like a family album, just to like remember where my family is, just because they've got to have some representation
I
somewhere.
agree. When I moved to California, I literally had this horrible studio, like very Hollywood. It was West Hollywood, I thought, but very adjacent. And
Yeah.
I did not feel I had to like close it off. I had a peeping Tom the first night, like the works. And I didn't have furniture. I was waiting for a friend to come. So anyway, I had just boxes. But I took out pictures. It was the most pathetic looking thing. I had to have pictures of my family.
Oh, that's
But,
sweet though.
like everything else, I was sleeping on like a raft. I was like, it was just not, but I had my pictures out there to
Got to
make.
have a couple pictures.
So I'm with you on that. So talk about anything that maybe, because you're in a position now where it's not always easy to, make the hard decisions. And what I mean is sort of go with just that risky, go with your gut feeling. And you may still do that, which you can follow up with that. But was there a time when you sort of in your career made that gut decision that maybe the numbers weren't saying to do this, or maybe, people weren't saying to do this, but you wanted to do it and it really was a good choice that you made in your career and in the business, perhaps on that side of things?
Yeah, I think, that happens often when it comes to choosing vendors for projects we're looking for. We don't do, a slew of small scale projects. Usually if we're doing, a project, it has a global audience, it has quite an undertaking. And so I think very often when you're choosing vendors, you can go through an RFP process, you can go through a pitch, and at the end of the day, you're probably with the salesperson in the beginning versus the person who's actually going to do the work for you. But that's where I think, regardless of sort of where the numbers are, you really have to feel out the vibe a little bit and how the relationship seems to be working, even in the recruiting process with these vendors, and really go with your gut from that extent. And I think, there have been a couple of times that I can think of, I won't kind of say who or what, where, I've maybe chosen one vendor because they've had sort of a better notoriety from a how to work with them experience versus like the numbers they've come with. Because I also think, once again, like the work that I'm in is so dependent on consumer behavior and what consumers are expecting at that moment that it could change by the time when you start the project to when you end it. So I think when it comes to choosing people you're working with and choosing partners, it's important to listen to your feeling and reaction as much as possible is available in the virtual world of how you're engaging with them and how your team is engaging with them, more so than sort of dollars and cents and numbers at the bottom line, because ultimately it's the collaboration that ends up breeding the successful work, more so than what the numbers they came into it with is. So I do strongly believe I believe in gut feelings in general, and I believe that there is a truth to that. So I do see myself using that more so when it comes to choosing partners.
Yeah, and even as you advance in your career, it's still obviously that plays a key role in how you make your decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as and something I know we talked about previously is, can you just, how is easy is it to go for it, right? The more successful you become. And I was thinking a lot about this. So I think it's really a important determination to figure out what is your metric of success, whether it's a project or whether it's in your personal life, right? Because like what you want maybe at your 20s coming out of, a recession and coming out of a business school is definitely different than maybe what you want in your 30s or 40s if you got two children and a house to maintain. And so I think it's really important to always have your own true north of what determines success, whether it's professional or personal, and allowing your decisions to be guided based on what that north is. Even though you can change it, you can definitely change what your true north is. But I think always checking in with yourself and keeping that in mind is critically important.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially like as you said, when you first graduated. I mean, look at what you wanted. You wanted to work with a financial company,
Yeah.
and but I mean, even if where you worked maybe changed, there might have been things in terms of okay, a path that you chose that you stayed on that path. You just switched from a financial company to retail, but
Right.
then that's evolved as well. And I think that people have to keep seeing that and realize okay, now, maybe it's not all about the dollars. Maybe it's
Yeah,
also a little bit about, quality. And so I think those are all things that you have to keep relooking at. Although I
absolutely.
think younger people now are sort of coming more, they're smarter about that.
Yeah, 100%.
you know,
No one's trying to burn the midnight oil as much as we used
I
to
think,
be.
yeah,
So
I see that definitely, which is great, so I guess it all depends. But well, turning into, and I know I don't even have to ask this in terms of Mac, but just in terms of diversity and inclusivity, that's obviously been so important this past year, and consumers especially. You talk about how you have to go with what consumers are saying, and I'm not saying that it never was something that people were looking for, but I think people are much more vocal right now. I think
absolutely.
they just not only want it from their brands, they really expect it. But
Mhm.
just in general, as a marketer, how important is that? Because you have such a you know, voice of, that maybe other people don't have, smaller groups, people who can't maybe, sort of fight for what they want. Do you feel as marketers that there is some sort of responsibility there? Or is it more on a personal level or a combination? Like, tell me about that in terms of how you sort of approach things in your beliefs.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it's both professional and personal. Mac's founding credo is all ages, all races, all genders, and that is absolutely core to our DNA and is woven into everything that we do and stand for. And the same with me. My background is I'm an Indian American, and growing up, it was often hard to find the right foundation shades to match me. And so that's one of the best parts of working at Mac is we have the most inclusive shade ranges in the industry, and we have a long history of representing beauty across that gender and diversity spectrum, especially in marketing campaigns, right? You look at how RuPaul was our first Viva Glam spokesperson back in 1994. I think it was the first drag queen to actually secure a major beauty contract. That is groundbreaking, right? And we continue to use that type of mindset and that inclusion in all of the work that we do, especially from an omni-channel and innovation perspective. So like I mentioned before, our augmented reality tools are all designed to seamlessly adapt to a wide range of skin tones and face shapes. So everything that we do, we make sure we test on a range of skin tones and face shapes to make sure we're including all different types of people in our experiences as well. We also have a large range of artists. As I'm sure you know, they're sort of our cornerstone and the anchor of our beauty business. And so they are also the ones who are testing every single product before it's launched. And they are, a range of inclusion and diversity as well. And so with that, we have a bunch of different parts of the process where we're making sure we're being fully inclusive because it is so core and important to really who we are as a brand.
Yeah, and as I said, I mean that I knew just from your advertising and what you see from your marketing stance from Mac. But talking about that, you talked about with RuPaul, and that was I think '94 you mentioned,
Yeah.
and still we saw things like that, but it didn't change as much as what we're seeing now.
Right.
And maybe in terms of just historically, like from back in '94, why what change do you think in marketing, in branding, in whatever it may be in terms of the industry that made things now seem to really, I feel like, let's hope that we're going to actually see this last and it's not just for the next year and then we're going to go back to, business as usual.
I mean, I think when we did it back in 94, it was groundbreaking, right? And I think at the end, Mac has always been known for that, as you mentioned, right? We're not really standing away from something that does kind of send some ripple effects. But that said, I think it's not just what a brand is putting out there from a campaign perspective. It's the society we're in. It's the political and economic climates we're in that affect, right? Like how people are perceiving this and sort of, how mainstream it becomes.
Mhm.
I would love if things got mainstream sooner, right? Like you look at a lot of these campaigns, whether it's like, lingerie brands, or whether it's, brands that are targeted towards children, now including people of all different sizes and shapes and colors in their campaigns. That should have happened a lot earlier, but quite frankly, it took up until now, and it took some critical events to get there. So I don't think it's maybe just from a marketing perspective. I think it's really sort of where the society is from a headspace point of view and how that continues to evolve that affects how prevalent it is and how much of a risk other brands take kind of doing these things that really push the boundaries. And Mac, like we said, has always been about inclusion. So putting RuPaul out there in 94 wasn't something we ever, shied away from.
Right. But Mac does have the luxury of being a brand that can do that and be considered, it would actually benefit the brand, and which is great. It's not taking away from the fact that Mac has always stepped out there, but other brands perhaps have to look at the bottom line a little bit. So it's as you said, it's more what consumers are accepting. But it's just funny. I'd like to see how much that the brands that take a little bit more risk, that they can, like, everyone needs their baby steps, but that might then help the rest of the consumers really evolve more. The more we're seeing it, the more it becomes commonplace. And
Yeah,
that's what we
absolutely.
so yeah. So, but I agree with that. I think that it's that, as I said, Mac has always definitely been jumping out there and doing that kind of thing. But hopefully we'll see it more. I mean, it just seems like
Yeah, I would love to. I think it would be great. And it would really kind of impact, children seeing different types of things and what the assumption is, for children of what is in advertising, what is in, modeling campaigns. So hopefully we're moving in the right direction.
Well, just think in terms of you, as you said, Indian, and growing up, there maybe weren't shades of makeup that worked well for your skin, but
Right.
just also watching TV or
Yep.
what you saw represented. I mean, did that impact you in any way? Were you like, where are people who look more like me?
Absolutely. And I think now we're seeing a lot more diversity in media and TV and whatnot. And it's so nice to see it. Like, you look at something like, a woman of Indian descent in the White House, right, with Kamala Harris. Like, that's incredible to see. I love to see society moving in this direction. And I love to see that my kids and hopefully my grandkids and whatever, one day it'll be commonplace to have a full range of diverse individuals in our media, in our politics. And I think, that's kind of where the personal part of the question where you brought up of what does diversity and inclusiveness mean to you? I mean, I'm case in point, right? Like, I love seeing that. And I think working for a brand like Mac that really heroes that inclusion and heroes that diversity is critically important for me to being true to who I am, and being passionate about the work I do.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And it'd be great to be able to ask is your toddler a boy, girl?
He's a boy. Yeah. So that being said, he loves a good virtual try on. So
Oh, yeah.
I do play with our digital tools with him a lot.
Awesome.
And he definitely enjoys it. And it's for everyone, like we said. So all ages, all races, all genders.
Yep. But it would be great, like talking to him, 20 years from now, and now he's seeing more of himself,
Yeah.
represented. So it's just, I think that it's interesting when you are able to, as you said, sort of talk through the generations and see how it changes.
Yeah.
Um, Getting a little bit off of that and talking more about back to sort of advertising, but more in a fun way. Is there a campaign out there that just you were like, wow, this is pretty amazing? And maybe in the last few years, it doesn't have to be, especially this past year has been, I mean, people have been creative, but it's not, we haven't necessarily seen everyone doing what we see historically. But is there something that jumps out that you're sort of like, I wish I was a part of that? Or
Hmm.
wow, I wish you're not even a part of it, but just that is amazing.
Interesting. I'll keep sort of our brands aside because I don't
Yeah.
think that's fair per se. But one of my favorite campaigns, I think it was in the last two or so years, I have to check on that, was Nike's campaign. I think it was called like the toughest athlete. It was about all of the mothers. It was, I don't know if you remember this. There was a visual of a pregnant woman, a pregnant athlete who was on like a bouncing ball, and Serena Williams was in it. There was a bunch of different moms in different stages of their motherhood. And I thought it was, I mean, beyond like a tearjerker, which, you know, Nike does really well. It really was an amazing way to identify such a strong consumer group with strong spending power, and also showcase their products everywhere from like someone, you know, the conception of their child throughout the, you know, pregnancy process to birthing their child and then experiencing Nike with their child, right? Like it's showing the consumer in so many different stages with the strong spend of a mom, right? Which I can personally attribute to. So on one hand, it really tugs the heartstrings, but it was a smart way to include the brand in different stages. And I just thought it was just such an impressive campaign for them to do. So that was one of my favorites.
Well, and I think I find that the stories are really, you know, like
Yeah.
even though it's, you know, obviously it's a campaign, it's about a brand, but when you have that story, that whether you're laughing about it or whether it's, you know, pulling at your heartstrings, I think that that really lends a lot to the success of a campaign.
Absolutely. It needs to sort of hit on both points.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like the Hallmark commercials.
Oh, so another one, you know, another one thinking about it that was really good. I think it was in the last year or so, Facebook, when they had the portal screens that they put it. I think there was one, if I'm not mistaken, in, you know, the kitchen of like a grandparent, and then the kitchen of like you know, obviously the parents and kids. And it was kind of talking about how they were interacting. And especially in the last year and a half, when, you know, a lot of, you know, grandparents weren't able to see their kids and grandkids because of the isolation. It was really a nice way to sort of play on what we're all experiencing. And I thought it was really well timed as well.
But
So
it's a positive way.
yes,
I like
absolutely. It's
you
about
know,
connection, right?
yeah,
It wasn't about we're having to isolate. It's about how are the new ways to connect, which is a smart way to sort of turn a campaign on its head.
yeah, no, I agree. So now what about, we talked a little bit about your must-haves for the deserted island, but is there a guilty pleasure you have? You know, when we first started talking, you sort of said you like to have that free, you know, that extra time when when like something ends early. But is there something else that maybe that you were just like sort of lock your door away from and just be like, okay.
I mean, I don't think this is probably surprising to anyone who's watching this, but I love mostly everything on Bravo. I love a good reality show. I love a good Real Housewife. I mean, at the end of a long day of meetings and strategies and whatnot, like who wouldn't want to kick up their feet and just watch one of the Real Housewife franchises and see what disaster is going on there? So yeah, I mean, like everyone else, that's sort of how I blow off steam. You know, working out's great. That's all for your physical health, but like I really love a good marathon, especially reality TV marathon.
Well, that's my brother is my younger brother is the reality guy. He loves to watch them all. I don't really watch them, and I was actually, when I flew back to California a couple years ago, when I was sort of, I've been back and forth between New York and LA, and I was sitting next to one of the housewives. I'm not going to say who. And we ended up talking and getting along. And she, you know, I was just moving to the area where I was moving to Newport Beach area. And she's like, oh, I'll have to. And she like took me all around, and she was like, it kept inviting me out with her friends. She
That's
was
so nice.
lovely. And I was like, so I was telling my brother, like he heard from my mom or something that, and because I didn't know who she was, you know, I mean, like as we're talking, and I even asked, and I'm like, oh, sorry, I didn't, you know, I don't know, you know, but when I told then my brother, all of a sudden I get a text from my brother, which one? And then I told him, and he's like, oh, I love me, my, you know, like,
Oh, that's awesome. That's
like,
so cool that they were so nice in real life. And so,
she was incredible. Like, and I'm so glad I hadn't seen it, because on the show, you know, you see the exaggerated versions a little
of course.
and so and like I said, she was such a nice one. Like what she did for me was just amazing. So
That's great.
my side of her, I haven't seen the I never experienced some of what I've seen on the Housewife show.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, hey, it's a nice departure from our everyday.
Yes, but no, but I understand that. Mine is Hallmark movies. Again, I like the Hallmark commercials. I watch them.
Well, we're approaching holiday season. Christmas isn't
Yeah,
too
oh my
far,
gosh.
and there's so many new ones that come out, right?
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's just I love a happy ending. So that's just,
Who doesn't?
yeah. So, all right. So what about, you mentioned it a little bit where you sort of have to have a plan B, but what about a real plan B? Like as far as you can't be in the marketing world at all. There's no marketing, no advertising, nothing. What's your plan B?
That's a good question. I think I'd be a wedding planner. I
Yeah.
know that's so wild, but I thrive in a little bit of the chaos. So I love sort of the rushing up to the big day. And maybe this is also, I'm just coming back from my sister's wedding. So I'm just kind of, riding off that high, but, I love it. I love the organization. I love kind of like the idea of like making it someone's, it's someone's Picasso, they get to make this beautiful event and you get to be a part of like such a big, important memory in their lives. So I always thought it would be super fun and probably very stressful, but still fun to be a wedding planner. So that could be a fun plan B.
Well, you could have a bridezilla though.
You could, but that's where you have to just learn how to roll with the punches, right? And I mean, hey, we all do that in our day to day anyway. So it's
Yeah.
just a different application of it.
Indoor or outdoor wedding?
I had an outdoor ceremony and an indoor wedding. I mean, I love a good outdoor experience, but there's just so much risk with weather that you just never know. My sister ended up having an outdoor wedding as well, which luckily it worked out, but it's always a risk, you need to have that. You need to have a plan B for that as well.
There's so many reasons for a plan B. We could
So
just
many.
go on plan B.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Sonia, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. This was awesome. And, like I said, hopefully we'll soon be able to be doing this again in person. But I really appreciate you taking the time. And for everyone watching, keep coming back. We're going to be doing this each week. And another person, just like Sonia, will have her story to share. And so if you have anyone that you want me to sort of pull back the curtains on, just let me know and I will do my best to see if I can get them. Anyway, again, Sonia, thank you so much.
Thank you
Enjoy
for
your
having
toddler.
me. Oh, thank
Took
you.
some time out for me.
Thank you so much.
And
This is great to be here.
yeah, no, I'm really happy for that. So anyway.
Thanks.